Hi, Reggie back speaking about healing America's narratives, the feminine, the masculine, our collective national shadow. The previous episode, I ranted a bit about the current state of the U.S. House of Representatives, where there is no speaker, and where a very tiny minority of representatives is pretty much holding the House hostage, and then by default holding the United States Congress hostage, and then by default holding the United States of America hostage. Just another example of how a small minority of people, how a minority of people can, in fact, override the majority and get what they want through politics and taking care of themselves. In other words, that group-centric level of development where my group is more important than your group, and my group is more important than the larger group, which in this case is the country. So back in the second impeachment of Donald Trump, after he had invited people into Washington, D.C. For January 6th and encouraged them to go down and, quote, stop the steal and prove that he had, in fact, won the 2020 election, which he hadn't. I'm not going to repeat all of the statistics around that for now. So in that impeachment trial, where he basically was trying to override an illegal election result, Mitch McConnell said to the Republicans in the Senate, and I was going to read this, so it's a direct quote from McConnell, this, meaning the impeachment, this is not about this president. It's not about anything he's been accused of doing. It's always been about November 3rd, 2020. It's about flipping the Senate. So despite the fact that there was clear evidence, and there's even more of it now as I'm speaking, that Donald Trump knew what he was doing and had been planning on doing that for months in advance, because he had a sense he might lose, that the Republicans in the Senate this time, we're not speaking about the House this time, in order to save their seats and flip the Senate, would not vote in favor of impeachment. Now, interestingly, the final vote was 48 senators in favor of impeachment, in other words, finding Donald Trump guilty, and 52 opposed. One Republican, Mitt Romney, was one of those 48 votes in favor of convicting the president. What's interesting about, again, the setup of the United States federal government, the 48 senators who voted to convict Donald Trump in the impeachment trial represent approximately 18 million more Americans than the 52 senators who voted not to convict him. So again, the minority view held, the majority view, in this case, 18 million people, was ignored. There are many more examples of that take place sometimes in the legislature, the United States Congress, sometimes in the courts. I'll just offer two more. When the United States Supreme Court overrode Roe v. Wade, they were basically moving against what well over 60% of American citizens wanted, a woman's right to choose. When they overrode New York State's prohibition against concealed carry for handguns, they overrode, again, over 60% of what Americans wanted. So there is a movement, there is a tendency, and it takes place in various, pseudo, almost legal ways, maybe meta-legal ways, where both in the judiciary, in the legislature, and depending on who's in the White House, to concentrate power in a minority of Americans' hands, regardless of what the majority want. Now, that's a big issue and a big statement to make. I'm by no means the first person to make that statement. It requires some study, some reading, and some learning to understand how that's done, how it's been going on, but it's effectively in many ways a return to the Confederacy sans the actual literal enslavement of African Americans. So with that, I hope you'll continue to tune in, and I appreciate your paying attention to some important issues that face the United States of America in this third decade of the 21st century. Thanks again.